you see that. And what we try to do in my business is find people like that to run companies, because those are the people who move organizations. And as we all know, look, I love and care about Case, but it really is not Case, the institution. It's the people who really make that institution. And clearly, he's one of them. Ken Laparo, and I was who's sitting here in Mecca. Every once in a while, I open the Case magazines, and we'll see your picture doing something. And Ken, once again, the academic and intellectual horsepower, you know that in about 30 seconds of talking with him. So driven, hardcore, very hardcore from the professor side. You weren't an easy instructor. But Mecca took your systems engineering class. Yeah, and I think you actually did well, which she's a lot smarter than me. But seeing that kind of intellectual horsepower and drive and what you've been able to do with the school so far, all these years as I've seen you help develop this school, those are really important lessons. So they're Dwight Davey, another faculty member who was an advisor of mine while I was on campus. You talk about do good and be good. On top of his game in biomedical engineering and orthopedic engineering, but just fundamentally he was focused on family, good person, driven, successful. And that combination of do good and be good was terrific for me. It really made a lasting impact. So there were many examples from the faculty that really shaped me. But then there were also people outside the faculty. Like Bob Smilik here with his wife Anita, who I didn't get to see on the way in. I have to tell you, when I went to Case, I grew up in Pittsburgh. I went to Carnegie Mellon when I was in high school, and my dad, who was a Carnegie Tech grad, said, "Oh, that Case is a good school," and I wanted to leave town. So I ended up coming to Case, and I just had no perspective, right? So I study engineering. I'm doing fun things. I really enjoyed my time in the school. On the faculty, I started a couple of businesses in Cleveland, small businesses, but businesses nonetheless. I was trying to build businesses outside. These guys were making me teach 3 classes a semester. We had to practice my master's program going, right? And being kicker. A lot going on. I'm sitting at a faculty I don't know what kind of trustee or advisory visiting committee lunch, and I get seated at a table with Bob Smilik, and so he's being Bob, and he's just an inquisitive guy who likes to dig in. He's like, so am I. So what do you do? He goes, look, I have a pretty cool job. He goes, I was working for some guys who, and by the way, they're really good guys. I spent 20-some years at GE. He was a leader in GE. Guys who do what I do for a living pulled him out. I guess you did something else, but then you went into running Silco. He was the CEO of Silco, which was a leveraged buyout. And he goes, I have to tell you, there are 2 guys who sit on my board, Terry O'Toole and Barry Wolpert. And these guys are, first of all, I remember you said, they're really nice guys, which struck me. I said, Wall Street, nice guys. That didn't compute. He goes, they're really nice guys. He goes, but they have a really cool job. They fly around the world looking at companies. If they like a company, they buy it. And they bring a guy like me in to run the business. And it's great because then I have a great relationship with my board. We all go off and we can make a tremendous amount of money together if we do well. And so Bob just was the first person who ever mentioned Goldman Sachs to me. I didn't know who it was, right? And so he said, these guys work at Goldman Sachs. And by the way, they work in Goldman Sachs in the principal investment area, and I went to the same group that I'm in. So being the unpolitical guy, not that smart guy that I am, I waited. I got good guidance there. I started researching this. I then decided I want to go join that team of good guys doing interesting work. How do I do that? I ended up going to Wharton for an MBA. And then I went to Goldman Sachs. I joined Goldman Sachs in investment banking. Investment banking was fun, but very quickly I wanted to build companies. And so I moved into the private equity business about 6 months into it. And I'm sitting in a cube outside of Terry O'Toole's office. And I walk in, and Terry O'Toole is a senior partner of the firm. He was the number 2 guy in my division who was driving all our investments at the time, driving our industrial investing. And I walked into Terry's office. I said, boy, I have a small world story for you, and it all kind of revolves around Bob Smilik. And he looked at me and smiled in the same way that if somebody mentions your name to me, that I did. Bob's a terrific guy, great perspective, was able to give guidance to a young guy like me about that, and I kind of leaned on it probably more than I should. Okay, what really do they do? And I asked all the dumb questions, and he was very patient. And he and I stayed in touch and did business together going forward, too. So it was people outside, not just the faculty members on campus. It was, Mario Marino. Mario is a trustee of the school. Mario grew up in Cleveland cleaning houses with his mom and built a company called Legion Corp. Captains of Industry. When we got that little team of people together, I invited Mario in. When Mario sold the company for $2 billion to Computer Associates, he made a fortune. And Mario is pure energy. You meet him, he is just absolutely pure energy, and he's also heavily into philanthropy. And his view was, his idea of philanthropy, he made a couple $100 million when he sold his company. He decided to go help other entrepreneurs. So he goes, sets up shop in Northern Virginia, and starts investing in tech companies in an incubator. Right before the tech and telecom bubble, just grew and then exploded, but it grew. And so he did his venture philanthropy by helping entrepreneurs and turned his big fortune into a bigger fortune. But also started a venture philanthropy organization that brings the best of business practices into nonprofit organizations. He's just an extraordinary individual who, by the way, also gave me time when I probably didn't deserve it, and took my calls and took meetings with me, and would be very blunt and say, you're a smart guy, but you really don't know what you're talking about in these 3 areas. We would have those kind of conversations. He'd give me good guidance. We talked about Bob and Charlene Ward. Bob has been a true hero for me. Bob went out into Silicon Valley back when it wasn't Silicon Valley, and he was with Fairchild Semiconductor after leaving Bell Labs. Started there when there were probably 6 companies, and has been actively involved in building up the venture community out on the West Coast, but spent an extraordinary amount of time, he and his wife, with me, giving me guidance about just do good, be good. Here's what I do as an investor. And he comes at this rather from the technology side. But then you look at his kids, and his son got an Academy Award for writing this thing. So he wasn't a guy who just said, okay, my kids just have to be just like me, so guys, you're safe. You don't have to go to Wall Street. I learned from him to just make sure you help develop people. And that was true. So I have to tell you, and I have countless examples of people at Case that makes this a great institution. And I have great friends that I've made here. And Julie Grubaugh, who, by the way, you saw in the video, because it's funny, because when we were doing the Case Engineering Support Group, we got a lot of attention, right? Everybody always come in, and they'd all want to have her in the video, take her picture, because she was just, and she still is today, with the great energy, excitement, enthusiasm. And it was a real driver of the organization. And I was fortunate to have a great team around me. So Julie's right back there, right? And we're still friends today. So look, I have to tell you, that's my Case story. That's my Case entrepreneurship story. I've had an absolute blast here. You can't imagine how happy I was to get a call from Roger to ask to come back and speak. And I have to tell you, it's been good. And I measure my success in life by the size of my wife's mouth. And I have to tell you, so far things have been pretty good, and I attribute a lot of it to this scope. So with that, maybe I'll open up for questions.
Yeah, are there any questions for Jack?
Yeah, I'd just like to ask, if you were comparing your investment style to Warren Buffett, how would you?
He's a lot better.
Different criteria.
I'm not.
Could you repeat the question, please?
I was asked to compare our investing style to Warren Buffett's. And look, in the first case, I mean, you talk about, there's once-in-a-lifetime people who just know a business or a sport or something. He just has it. He has a magic associated with him. We all try to be like Warren Buffett. He tells in a very folksy way how he values businesses and how he does deals. There's a good local story. Ralph Shea, who ran Scott and Fitzer for Warren Buffett. And I do buyouts for a living. And another person who was able to give me really good guidance while I was here in Cleveland was Ralph Shea. And Ralph was he was running Scott and Fitzer back in the 80s, and was under a raid by guys like me, but hopefully not as nice. But they were raiding his company. He didn't want to do the deal with them. So he started looking for somebody to team up with to buy the company with. And he turned to Warren Buffett. And to hear Ralph tell that story, he said, well, I called him. He said, the company sounds interesting. And it was a collection of like 17 different businesses, Rolodex, a couple of auto parts businesses, industrial businesses. Buffett listened to him for about an hour and said, okay, send me the financials. Sends out the financials. And in about 3 days, he decides, okay, I'll buy the company, and signs the transaction a day later.